and we are here with our first episode of our new series called the COVID Collabs. This month of May is just awesome and going to be filled with a bunch of content and a bunch of great interviews and conversations with some really cool people from all different walks of life. I have podcasters, influencers, and people from across the world in Australia. So super cool guests are going to be packed in this month. And so to fit everybody in this, I'm posting 3 times a week this month of May. So the regular weekly episodes on Monday as well as on Wednesdays. And then we, like I said, and I promise, we are having these things called 5-Minute Fridays where we have fun and enjoy with our guests and just have, a quick game or a good laugh. And not that it's much different than what we did on the interview, but it's just a little bit of extra fun stuff for y'all to enjoy. So this month is going to be packed with a bunch of great stuff. I really hope you guys enjoy them. So make sure you're following on YouTube if you want to see a little bit extra content. I promise you there's some good stuff that you will not want to miss out on. So yeah, there's a bunch of great things to look forward in this month of May, but we have a great guest to kick it all off. So yeah, let's get into it. So today's guest is awesome. She's a photographer and graphic designer. She's one of those cool Catholic Instagram influencers. And she's about to be a Catholic Instagram mom and bring a baby into the world later this year. You can follow her at Megs__Wells. Please welcome Megan Wells.
Hey.
Thanks for coming on. It's really great to meet you and to start talking and chatting with you online. And thank you for being so open to doing stuff like this.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for asking me.
Of course. So yeah, so what we're doing here is I'm trying to collab with a bunch of great influencers who are, in different fields of the Catholic world, different corners. So whether it's Instagram or podcasting, YouTubers, I just want to bring them all into this thing to kind of give you guys some more content that is more fun and more fruitful. So what we're going to do with these, we're going to start with a quick game, some rapid fire questions. I'm going to give you 30 and we'll see how fast you can do them.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
You ready?
Yeah.
Hold on, somebody's gonna try to FaceTime me and I'm gonna have to hang up on them. Okay. All right. The timer starts now. Texting or talking?
Texting. Oh, I didn't mean that.
Favorite or day of the week?
Mondays.
Favorite city in the U.S. besides the one you live in?
San Diego, California.
Nickname your parents call you?
Meg.
Last song you listened to?
Mumford & Sons. Don't remember the name.
Would you rather be able to speak every language in the world or be able to talk to animals?
Speak every language in the world.
Favorite holiday?
Christmas.
How long does it take you to get ready?
Oh, depends on the day. 20 minutes?
Scale of 1 to 10, how good of a driver are you?
10, but Avery would say 1.
Fill in the blank. Taylor Swift is
irrelevant to me.
What age would you want to retire?
45. Oh.
Invisibility or super strength?
Super strength.
Is it wrong for a vegetarian to eat animal crackers?
No, as long as they bite the heads off first.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how good are you at keeping secrets?
10.
Ariel or Jasmine?
Oh, what? Jasmine?
Favorite first celebrity crush?
Justin Bieber.
Dusk or dawn?
Oh my gosh, I had to figure out what you were saying. Dusk.
If you could travel back in time, what period would you go in?
Medieval.
Do you snore?
No.
Place you most want to travel to?
Greece.
Favorite junk food?
Chocolate covered pretzels.
Favorite childhood TV show?
We didn't grow up watching TV, so I lived under a rock.
Favorite movie?
Marley and Me.
Last Halloween costume?
Oh my gosh. I think I was an angel.
Cake or pie?
Cake.
Do you ever post inspirational quotes on social media?
Intertwined in a bigger caption, but it's never just my only caption.
What favorite ice cream flavor?
Mint chocolate chip.
Say a word in Spanish.
Hola. I speak German, not Spanish.
Favorite number?
5.
Have you worn socks with sandals?
Yes.
Why can't we tickle ourselves?
Wait, what?
Why can't we tickle ourselves?
That's so strange. I don't know. I don't know. I'm freaking confused now.
All right, last question. Favorite? Are reindeers real creatures?
Yeah. I lived in Alaska. They're real.
That's great. Oh, you lived in Alaska? I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, for 3 years.
So I found these questions off of Elfster. So
Elfster?
yeah.
I've never even heard of that.
It's like they like a secret Santa generator and do a bunch of other stuff, but it's cool.
Oh gosh.
It was some pretty good questions and they were nice and appropriate. So
Yeah, true.
I like doing I'm a youth minister, so I always do like little icebreakers all the time, and it's like my favorite pastime. So I was like, oh, let me incorporate this into with my guests.
Heck yeah.
Break the ice a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna structure this similar to like how I would do my Instagram showcases, and I'm gonna ask you a couple things, and like I said, I like to start off with a little bit of your background to share with my followers, share with those who are listening, a little bit of who you are. So why don't you start off with telling us a little bit about your faith, how it started, and then how it kind of evolved to where you are now.
Okay. So right now I'm 22. I've been out of college for a year now. Married to a Marine, and we are in Albuquerque, New Mexico. But I was raised a cradle Catholic. I'm the oldest of 5 kids. Both my parents are strong Catholics. I was homeschooled my whole life up until high school. And then I went to public school and I loved it there too. But wow. I think that homeschooling aspect played a lot into not only being catechized, I don't know, like learning catechesis and being taught everything about catechized. Yeah. Being taught all of those things about my faith from my parents and having all of that time with my mom and learning how to respect others, talk to those who are older than you, things like that you wouldn't get anywhere else. And that your parents as Catholics should be teaching you anyways. So I was really lucky and blessed with that. We grew up praying a decade before we'd get on a long road trip. We dressed up as saints for Halloween. We would have All Saints Day parties. Like, yeah, we were pretty Catholic.
That's awesome.
It was good. It was good. But come high school, college era, I didn't ever rebel. I never hated my faith, or I never really doubted it or questioned it either. There were definitely times when I thought, well, what if God isn't real? And then I was like, well, I'd rather be on the side that was wrong or the side that gave it a shot than the side that said he was never real.
That's awesome.
And so I stuck with that. And then come college, my parents really tried to get me to go to a Catholic college. I toured Franciscan University, Benedictine, and UC Dallas. And I didn't like, or not UC, University of Dallas. And I didn't like any of them. I didn't want to get stuck in a Catholic bubble. And I was worried that was what would happen. I felt like I'd been in a Catholic bubble my whole life. And I was like, no, I'm ready to go out into the world now. And I also wanted to play. I wanted to go to a school that had a good football team, that had a huge football stadium, that had really good sports because that was a huge part of my life.
Right.
So when I look back on it, yeah, I probably chose like the college lifestyle and sports over a strong, faithful education in college. But there's pros and cons to that. And now I'm just as strong and faithful as I was, well, more so, I guess, because then I met my now husband who wasn't Catholic, who questioned me on every bit of my faith.
That's so
And I
cool.
had to really go dig and find answers.
Mhm.
And my dad and I got a lot closer too, because I would reach out to my dad for answers, which was awesome.
That's so
Blessed
cool.
again to have a dad who knows biblical history, that knows the Bible inside and out,
That's so
that
cool.
knows the Catholic Church's teachings. Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at now. My husband's now Catholic. He converted completely on his own
That's so
because if
great.
I tried to, it wouldn't have worked.
That's so. Did he convert before or
um,
after? I think I remember watching you guys his
he
video.
converted right before.
Okay.
So in June we got married. Beginning of June he converted. End of June we got married. He received a butt ton of
That's
graces in the month of
awesome.
June. He was like, "If I die right now, I'll be good."
Oh
Like,
wow.
no.
That's so.
Yeah.
So you guys met in
Yeah.
college.
Yes, sort of. He was a childhood best friend, family friend of my high school best friend out in California. So I always knew him via her,
Mhm.
and he was always around. His family was always around. But when I moved to Alabama for college, he went down to San Diego for the Marines,
Okay.
and we never talked again for a couple of years.
Oh,
Never saw
wow.
each other, never thought about each other. And then I went back out to visit my best friend from high school, and we decided we wanted to go to Disneyland, which is in Southern California where he was at.
Yeah.
And he tagged along, and we hit it off like we'd been friends forever, but I wasn't looking for anything.
Uh-huh.
I just gotten out of a really crappy relationship, and I was like, nope, it's me and God. I don't need guys.
Right.
But he's fun. He's a fun friend. He's a good guy, I'm sure, but like, no thanks.
Right.
But he fell for me. And then from June through November, we talked. We fought about the faith. We just grew in friendship, and I grew in my relationship with Christ a lot in that time too, and discerning, do I take this leap with a guy who's not Catholic? When I said that was my one big, my one big point, he has to be Catholic.
Yeah.
Do I trust God in that? Is God leading me to that? Or am I just making an emotional decision?
Right.
So yeah. And then mid-November, we decided to start dating, which when you're long distance, it's like, okay, cool, we're dating now, but like
Nothing changed.
nothing has
Yeah.
changed. Yeah.
Sucks. Oh, wow.
I'll see you when I see
Yeah.
you. Our entire relationship was long distance. We spent a total of probably 55 days together before we got
Wow,
married, like
really?
physically in person. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Kind of weird. A total of a year and a half at least of dating, but
Yeah.
like in regards to
Together.
being physically
Yeah.
present, yeah, it was probably 55
That's
days.
insane.
Yeah.
But that's
Yeah.
awesome. That's
Super
so
weird.
cool though. Like to see that your guys' relationship was still strong enough to like withhold that and during that time. I mean, obviously it's part of now your lifestyle, right? Like
Right. Communication and trust. If you can't have those in long distance, then it's not going to
Yeah.
work. And if you don't have those in a marriage, then it's not going to
Yeah.
work.
That's so cool.
So yeah.
So because he's a Marine, how often do you guys have to move?
So it depends. Sadly, I had always wanted to go back out to California. That's where I went to high school.
Mm-hmm.
And so when he and I got engaged and I knew I was graduating college and I was going to get to move back out to California.
Yeah.
And this time San Diego, where it's beautiful. I was pumped. And we had 5 short months there and they moved us.
Oh, man.
I know. So now we're in New Mexico for quote unquote 3 years, but that can always change with the military, especially because we're on an Air Force base.
Oh, wow.
And they're shutting down the Marine unit on this base in October of this year.
Oh, really?
So we're kind of up in the air.
Is
right
that
now.
because
We
of
might be here for a year.
COVID or nothing related at all?
No, it's not related to that at all. They were doing that before any of this happened. They're just shutting it down and moving it back to their headquarters in Texas or something.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So anywhere between a year to 3 years, we move.
Okay. So do you guys ever like, is it house buying? Is that how it happens? Or, I mean, this might be off topic, but you know, like it's always a question that I had because I have a friend who's in the Air Force and I know he like has to move like every 3 years too, and he
Yeah.
said that it really depends on how well they're ranked and stuff like that, right? And so he's
Right.
only
Right.
bought 2 houses, but he's moved like 5, 7 different states.
Yeah. So we haven't bought a place yet,
Hmm.
but it kind of just depends on where you end up. When we were in San Diego, we were able to find an apartment that was cheaper than the rent check that the military gives him.
Hmm.
So we were able to sacrifice a couple things like a garage or a lot of space and just pocket that extra money so
Hmm.
we could get out of debt.
Nice.
And then when we found out we were moving to New Mexico, we looked up the area and
Hmm.
it's one of the least safe places in America
Oh wow.
crime wise.
Whoa.
So we just said, okay, we're gonna throw in for on base housing, and if there's something available, we'll just jump on it.
Hmm.
And luckily, there was something available, and now our whole rent check gets taken because we're on base. So we
Okay.
don't get to pocket any extra money, but
Right.
we do have the piece of safety. So
That's awesome. That's really
yeah,
nice. I mean, obviously that's especially in a whole new state. I mean, you probably both have never been
yeah,
to.
right.
So,
So have you been to New
no, I've
Mexico?
never
Like no.
never even thought of going to New Mexico, to be honest. So,
Yeah, so exactly. And we didn't feel like doing any of the research to find a house on the market here
yeah.
or find a place. And then the commute from work to the house would probably be 20 plus minutes. And we
Oh
were like,
wow.
to heck
Yeah.
with it. We'll just go on base.
That's nice.
Yeah.
So that's why you hear. I
Yeah.
remember seeing one of your stories that you would hear the wake up call often.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Taps and the national anthem. Yep.
Yep, that's so cool. That's unique. That's so cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um.
Yeah.
So, this is your same Instagram that you've had since you were in high school, right? Because I think I remember
Yeah.
one day I was
You
like,
can scroll.
I scroll and I'm like, wow, this is like old.
Goes way back. Yeah.
So it's
You
awesome.
can walk through every season of life with me, including the ones where I thought crop tops were cute. Yeah. Yep. It's all there.
That's so great. Yeah, I have like
Yeah.
3 different accounts. I have my account that I had when I was in high school, and then you can go all the way back.
Mhm.
But then I started ministry, and they're like, "Yeah, you need to make a public account and make that one private." I'm like, "Okay." So like, I made a public
Okay.
account, which is what I use mostly now,
Yeah.
and then I have this account for the podcast. But it's just
Yeah.
like, people like always complain to me. It's like, why do you have so many different ones? It's like if I could just merge them all,
Yeah.
I would, but I just
Yeah.
can't.
Yeah.
But
There's no way. I get asked that all the time. Do I create one big account with all my stuff on it, or do I create a separate photography account? And
yeah,
for me, there's too much that I do on my personal account
yeah,
that it would just take away from adding design in there and
yeah.
photography in there, and it would just be too much.
You,
I'd be posting more than I post now, and I already post too much.
that's awesome. But still, yet me and Sarah both watch your stories all the way through.
You guys are loyal. That's
Loyal,
amazing.
exactly.
You never hear that.
There's only like 10 people I really watch stories through and through.
Yeah.
And if one of us doesn't
Oh,
watch, Sarah
wow.
will say what I missed and stuff. So
Oh my gosh. That's
that must sound weird,
I
huh?
always hear no, that's actually really encouraging because I always hear the whole, "Well, your story looked like a bunch of little ant dots at the top this today, so I just didn't even look at it." And I'm like, "Well, thanks." My husband doesn't even look at
Oh,
them. He just sits there and, "Okay,"
right in front of your
taps
face.
through 'em. Yeah, I can hear myself getting, like, cut off every
Uh-huh.
second because he's just moving on to the next one.
What a,
I'm like, "That's rude. You don't even know what
what a
happened in my day."
savage.
I
I'm just
know.
kidding.
We just
Oh,
post
that's
too
cute.
much, and it was a giveaway, so it's irrelevant to me. I'm like, "Alright, okay."
That's so
Yeah,
cool. Um, yeah, so I was like, when I go on Instagram, I love to see people who are working for the kingdom, right? So like I feel like your
yeah,
account has, how has it fruition from like your personal account to like something gaining this following that you have?
right,
Like how
right,
did it happen? Like, and like if you remember when, and then like how did you
right,
decide to like, oh, let me just start sharing more of my life, or did it actually change, or was that how you actually were
right.
going about your Instagram?
So I obviously, you can scroll all the way back to the very first post. I think it's a post of me laying on the floor with Callie, and it's got one of those terrible Instagram filters
Yeah.
over it that you should never use. Um, and so when I first had it, it was just a way. I've always liked photos. I've always been a visual person. And so it was just a way to like keep track of that stuff. And everyone seemed to be on Instagram instead of Facebook when I was in college. So that's how it started. But then when I got to college, it was definitely a tool for validation.
Oh yeah.
Especially as a student athlete. And a huge chunk of my following came from being a student athlete,
really?
because once you're a student athlete, then all the other student athletes follow you and you become friends, and that's how you get invited to parties and all that stuff. And it was a huge tool of just like kind of meaningless posts, but I felt like I looked good, so it was like, yeah, obviously this is going on Instagram, and I'm gonna hope I get a lot of likes on it. And if I don't, then that's awkward. Like, you know. And so for a while that's what it was. And then it's always been, what's neat about in my Instagram, at least, and I think this could be true for everyone's, is that I've always shared what was important to me at that moment in my life. So even if it seemed meaningless, well, I thought crop tops and partying with friends was fun and important. You know, I thought this inspirational quote was just really important at that time, which now I'm like, that's not even from you, Meg. Like, what? Why would you share that? So it's always been true to what was important for me in that time of my life. But then after I went through a really rough relationship and not healthy relationship, that's when my relationship with God kind of changed, because then I had to choose him when I didn't really want to do anything besides lay in bed and cry or like burn someone's car or whatever. Like, just like all these emotions. And the first one isn't, hey, I should go to mass today because it's Sunday. Or I should go spend time with God instead of just being dramatic and yelling to my friends about what's going on. And so when that happened, that became important in my life, and my relationship with Christ became important in my life. And so that's what I started to share. And that's when it started to connect with people on a deeper level, because then it wasn't meaningless. Even though it was just another thing that was important in my life, it wasn't something shallow and meaningless anymore. And it was something that people could deeply relate to. And then meeting Avery, I always joke, but I'm like, well, the minute he got added to my Instagram, obviously my following was going to increase because he's a cute little Cali boy. Like, and people love relationships. So obviously, like, but I think the other thing too is sharing that long distance aspect and sharing the part of he's not Catholic, but I still chose to date him, not knowing if he'd ever be Catholic. And that whole thing's super relatable to people. And so the more that became important to me, that was actually like authentic to me and genuine, the more relatable I was to people, because it wasn't something shallow, and it wasn't just for validation. And then when I went to Seek in 2019, I went to Seek, and I started to find, right before Seek, I started to find all these different little Catholic accounts, a Catholic Convo with McLean, Cecilia Pappas, like all these people who I'm really good friends with now. And I started to see a whole different corner of Instagram and social media. And it was like eye-opening. And I was like, oh my gosh, I could make my timeline full of people who are inspiring, encouraging, that lift you up, that turn you back to God. Like this is a game changer. Like there's no more comparison, there's no more drama and crap and whatever else you're filling your timeline with. So I started to find them, and then when we got to Seek, we all met up and finally got to meet up in person. And I was like, this is neat. Like if Instagram can connect you to people who are good Catholics and good strong women across the world, like why wouldn't you take advantage of that? Like that's amazing. So I met them, and being a military brat too, and just a military wife now. My dad was in the Air Force and then husband's in the Marines. You are always moving, and it's really hard to find and keep good Catholic friendships. And so having Instagram as a tool to create those anywhere I go was like the biggest gift ever. So after Seek, that's when my Instagram oh really blew up, kind of. It happened really quick. And I was kind of overwhelmed by it. At first, you're like, oh, hell yeah, my Instagram's growing. This is great. And then all of a sudden, you're at 10K and you're like, I want out. Like, I'm backing out. This is too much.
Yeah.
Because then, of course, with anything comes a greater responsibility, comes more hate, more opinions, more
Right.
people who just wanted to bring you down,
Right.
things like that. And so you have to learn how to balance it.
Right.
And it's just a whole aspect of my life that I had never saw coming and never
Right.
consistently tried for.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
Right.
I don't know. It's been neat. It's been a bigger blessing than anything for sure, though.
That's so cool because, like, you know, like I've been, I follow like a ton of like Instagrams. Like I'm on social media a lot. I do it for my
Yeah,
ministry, whether it's just my personal use or if
right.
it's the podcast use. Like I am like on it often, so I get to like meet, like, you know, follow these cool Catholic accounts like yours. I forgot how I
Mhm.
even ran into yours, and I just was just like on this kick of trying to follow some cool Catholic influencers at some point in my life, and I guess I just bumped into yours as one of those who were suggested, maybe. But
Yeah,
what convicted me to continue to follow and watch your stories were when, because I'm a big, like, in my ministry, I love talking about vulnerability. My listeners know that. Like
yeah,
I talk about, like, you know, the gifts that vulnerability like allows us to experience each other's hearts. Um
right, right.
and you know, obviously there's got to be prudence in that, but
Hmm.
at the same time, like, people are always so afraid to be vulnerable. C.S.
Yeah,
Lewis C.S. Lewis wrote in his book The Four Loves. He said, "To love at all is to be vulnerable." And it's like one of my favorite quotes ever,
that's
because I
super
mean, like,
cool. I like
as
that. Yeah.
right as Christians, we're like called to love, right? And so, like, if
Hmm.
vulnerability is a way of loving, and a way that we can share our experiences with one another to hopefully help the other, then, you know, like, why why not share, you know? And so the fact that you were
Right,
so
right.
vulnerable in your stories were like, I think that's something like, wow, like I love hearing, you know, like, I'm never going to be in the military, but I love to hear her story and see how she is. So, like, I know
Yeah,
you grow a connection with your followers just because you are so vulnerable a lot of the times. And I know, like, a couple of days ago,
yeah.
you had a rough time with, like,
Hmm.
stuff with your
Hmm.
baby, and I know that it
Right.
sucked, and I felt bad. That's why I, like, checked in. I was like, hey, do you still want to do this? Like, I can understand if you want to take a break from all the craziness. So, like, wanted to
Yeah,
make sure that it's okay with you. But, you know, I can tell, I mean, like you said, it comes with a lot of both love and hate. How
yeah,
do you manage that I mean, especially the negative stuff. I know sometimes you go on your story and you talk about it,
right.
but, like, how does that, like, how do you,
Sometimes I call it out. Yeah.
yeah, how do you handle it with the ones that you don't get, you know, shared about?
Right. So I didn't start to actually handle it or deal with it or confront it until probably this past year.
Hmm.
Um, because for the longest time, I just thought, oh, well, benefit of the doubt. Everyone has different opinions. I'm
Right.
supposed to be the hands and feet of Christ, blah, blah,
Right.
blah, which is true. But when it comes to social media and when it comes to having that many people constantly messaging you, whatever, you don't owe them that time. You don't owe them. And if it's taking away from your own joy and your energy and your prayer time or whatever, then
Right.
it's not, you're not being the hands and feet of Christ.
Right.
Even Christ had to escape to the mountain
That's
and
true.
be alone.
Right.
So now I quite simply, if someone, because you have to kind of discern, like if someone wants to actually have a curious conversation or if they are just spewing hate or they've had a bad day and it's coming down at you
Right.
and they just are just being like that, um you kind of have to discern that. And after it happens, after a while, you get pretty good at discerning
Yeah.
whether someone wants to have a conversation or not. And then you just block, and I just block and delete. And there's no shame there
Mhm.
anymore. There's no guilt of like, oh well, I didn't give them the time of
Mhm.
day, or I'm such a terrible Christian. No,
Mhm.
no. If I'm going to
Mhm.
be vulnerable, if I'm going to share my life, if I'm going to spend time and energy giving you tips or experiences that
Mhm.
I've had, or I've spent time in little Instagram videos back and forth with followers before about
Yeah.
relationships or about sex before marriage or just like tough conversations, and the fact that they would come to me to ask me those questions and have those conversations with me
Right.
is like, okay, that's where the heart of the matter lies. Like, it's not gonna, this person who's being a butthole isn't worth the time because then it takes from
Yeah.
anyone
Yeah.
else who's actually got something that they need to talk to me about or hear or whatnot. So now it's just
Yeah.
block and delete. Yeah, because eventually, for a while, it started to get really bad, and Avery noticed. And
Mm.
I've said before, pretty recently, like, I'm just gonna throw my phone out the window, or I'm gonna go run over my phone with a car. Like, I'm done with it. He was like,
Yeah.
no, because if you do that, who's gonna who's gonna take that place? Who's gonna it,
Yeah.
you've created a following because people need to hear what you're saying or what you're
Right.
living through. Um, and so he always backs me up in it, but it started to get really bad to the point where he was like, you can't control what someone's going to say to you, how someone's going to react to your story. All you can control is what you do with it. So
Mm.
if that's blocking and deleting, great, do that. If it's
Yeah.
responding, do that with your own discernment.
Prudent.
But yeah,
Yeah.
the
That's
block is
awesome.
the great button and everyone should use it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I I asked because I mean anyone who's gonna end up everyone, there's a lot of people like who want to become Instagram famous, Catholic famous in some way, right?
Yeah.
But like
Yeah.
they don't. I want people to sober up and think like, hey, this is what comes with all of that.
Yeah.
And if you're
Yeah.
ready for that, then yeah, pursue that. And then I mean, but how,
Right.
it's not the it shouldn't. I mean, like honestly, unless it's actually being fruitful to your life, maybe it shouldn't be your goal.
Right.
Um,
Right, exactly. And I think too, I always relate it back to something my dad would tell me over and over when I was a kid, because I'm the oldest of 5.
mhm,
He would say, there's a lot of eyes on you.
mhm,
He was like, what you do is what they will do.
right,
What you say is what they will
right,
say. And they tell me now too, they're like, we harped on your behavior and everything so
right,
much when you were growing up because we knew if we could get you right,
yeah,
the other 4 would follow.
mm,
Like the other 4 would
right,
follow. And so I still take that onto social media and go, there are eyes on
yeah,
you. So how I carry myself, how I talk about
mhm,
others, how I like respond to
yeah,
things, um, is being watched
right.
and is going to be criticized
Oh yeah,
every single
oh yeah.
time.
And I
Yeah.
love how unafraid you are about it too. Like you go, like you're not. I mean, you are, you're prudent, but you're unafraid. Like, like what, a couple of days ago, you were talking about how, um, like, what was it? What did people say? Um,
Oh, offer it up.
offer it up. Oh man, oh, hate it. I was
That
like,
one.
yes, freaking
Yeah.
get on them.
Oh,
But
that's the worst.
I tell my kids like, if you like ever, when I'm doing ministry, like if I were to just say, hey, offer it up, like how bad of a minister would I be? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I
Right.
need to empathize with their suffering and like, hey, look, this
Hmm.
sucks. Like even though it's just like
Right.
like it's a high school heartbreak, yeah, it still sucks. I mean, I remember
Right.
when I was in high school and I got
Still sucks for
heartbroken, like
them.
it
Yeah.
sucked. Like
Exactly.
it was everything to
Exactly.
me. Um
Yeah.
so I mean, they'll realize, but it was just so good. So I love how honest and cool you are with it.
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. So to follow that, like, how has like this, this Instagram experience kind of like helped you like build your relationship with God, and like how has it influenced it in ways?
Yeah. The vulnerability part, like you were talking about, has been a huge aspect of it.
Hmm.
Because if you told me 2 years ago that I was going to have an early miscarriage and that I was just going to share that with
Oh yeah.
social
Oh
media,
yeah.
bawling my eyes out,
Right.
like, I'd say, yeah,
Right.
okay. I don't even talk to my friends when I'm bawling my eyes out. Like, why would I do that? Um, but no, like the peace that comes with that and the peace that comes with like the solidarity
Hmm.
in those vulnerable parts.
Yeah.
And seeing seeing the weight of what your life and every little bit of your day, your relationships, your experiences can mean and relate to someone else. Like I don't think people realize how much power and influence they have just because they exist. Like
Right.
literally
It's
just because
true.
they exist, not because they have a social media or anything like that. Like just their daily interactions, their relationships, their lessons that they learn daily, the little God revelations and God winks that they
Yeah.
have. And then when they share that with just one person, that influence like is unheard of. And the fact that I get to see it in a major amount of numbers and have
Mm-hmm.
people say your story about your miscarriage just brought me peace because this morning we
Wow.
lost ours at 8 weeks. It's like, okay,
Chills.
wow. Like,
Chills.
yeah, well, it's,
Yeah.
like that's stuff that wouldn't happen if I didn't have the other thing too that I wanted to mention was back in college, I said it was about validation a lot.
Yeah.
It was a tool for validation. But until my relationship with God started to get really grounded and serious, my confidence started to come from that.
Yeah.
And it didn't need to be about validation anymore. So we got rid of that huge chunk of what people use social media for. And
Right.
I was able to enter into the whole conversational aspect and the whole like, hey, I don't need your likes or your comments or anything,
Right.
but this is what happened to me today. And it was really good and important. And I feel like it could touch someone.
Right.
And you're able to open up that door because there's no worry about the likes or anything else anymore.
Right.
So, yeah.
That's so great. Praise. I feel like people demonize social media a lot. And yeah, there's a lot of dark
Mm,
parts of it, but there's so
yeah.
much good that can come from it. And I want, that was one of the original purposes for doing these stories is just cause these
Right.
podcast episodes was to show the light side, like what good could be done through Instagram.
Right.
Like how many relationships have I like in my current like life as a podcaster, like kind of how many relationships have been started because of
Hmm.
Instagram, like so many and so many great ones,
Right. Right.
um
It's kind of the new wave of like Catholic community. Like
right.
Avery and I have so many solid Catholic friends now
Yeah.
that we met first through Instagram.
Mhm.
And then you have to also like put yourself out there, like go meet that person for
Yeah.
coffee or go to Seek or go to
Mhm.
SLS, go to those Catholic conferences
Yeah.
and meet those people in person because Avery did that this past January. We went to SLS and
Mhm.
he kind of knew some of these people through Instagram,
Mhm.
hung out with them in Phoenix, Arizona for 3
Mhm.
days. Those guys all chose to take on Exodus 90
Oh
together. Those
wow,
guys all
that's so
still
cool.
keep in touch together. They all call each other all the time. And those are the kind of friendships like that. No matter where, like physically, we're not close. None of them live in New Mexico.
Yeah.
But those are the kind of relationships that are going to continue to build good men, good
Right.
women,
That's
good
so
marriages.
cool.
And they all stemmed from social media.
Yeah.
Like,
Love
so.
it. Love that. That's so cool. That's so cool to hear. Like you see, like, oh man, I just love to hear those kind of stories because, I never tell my kids to get off social media. I like, hey, if you're gonna be on social media,
Mhm.
filter what you take in. Like
Right, right.
go like follow these accounts. I always have a list of accounts to follow, like to have them follow. You're definitely one of those on the list. I have the living
Well, that's
person.
how my Instagram grew
Yeah,
then.
it's all me.
That's where it came from.
Youth
Good
ministers like
answer.
me.
Yeah.
No, but yeah. So, um, I just love it. I always just tell them filter what you take in and see, follow the right kind of
Yeah.
people, and like you can be influenced very well by those
Mhm.
people on Instagram, right? So we're gonna take a
Exactly.
little quick break right here, and we'll come back with some more
Right.
questions. All right, we're back with Megan Wells, and we're she's a great Instagram influencer, and you're also a graphic designer and a photographer.
I am.
So
Yeah.
when did that start? How did that start? And how did you like stuff like that? When and how? Which one came first?
So, when was high school?
Oh, wow.
The high school I went to out in California had an intro to graphic design class,
Cool.
and it had a nationally recognized yearbook class. It wasn't the kind of class
Wow.
that you take instead of PE. Like, you
Yeah.
know how people choose and they're like, oh, yeah, I'll take yearbook so I get out of
Yeah,
PE.
yeah. That's so
Yeah.
cool.
No, you had to really prove yourself to to make it into the class and then to stay in yearbook for the next 4 years.
Really?
Um,
Wow.
it was competitive, but that
To be
was
nationally
that was good.
recognized is like kind of cool right there.
No, yeah, we went from California, we flew to Boston for a yearbook convention because our yearbook had won a lot of awards. Yeah.
Wow, that's
Stuff you don't ever
insane.
think of.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Who knew
yeah.
that had that? That
I
exists.
know, right? Total nerd over here. But so that's where it started. And that's where both photography and just like love of design and layout
Hmm.
and typography and everything
Hmm.
started. And then when I went to college, soccer was the first most important thing. So
Hmm.
when soccer fell through, or not fell through, when it happened at Troy University in Southern Alabama, then I had to look into my majors and what?
I know. I have a friend who's a
You
focus
know
missionary
someone?
over there at Troy.
No way.
Yeah.
Wait, right now?
Yeah, right now. Her name is Blair
Okay, I wouldn't
Hobinson.
know.
Unless, do you
I
know
wouldn't know.
Connor?
Connor what?
Collins? He's
Maybe?
a team lead there now. And I don't know. I know you just said you've been in out a
Oh,
year,
maybe.
so.
Yeah, I've been out a year. It's been a little while. But yeah, that's so weird. No one knows of Troy University unless they watch football because we beat LSU
Oh,
once.
really? No, I just know
Yeah,
of her because
only you.
I support my friend who's a focus missionary there, so that's why I only know of Troy. I
Oh,
was like, oh, so
that's so cool. Okay, well,
yeah,
yeah. So went there and claimed graphic design as my major. They had a really good graphic design program.
nice.
And at first, both of my parents were kind of like, "Are you sure? Like, not business, not nursing, not
Right,
teaching." I was like,
right,
"Nope, graphic design." And I didn't switch it. I didn't switch it at all. I didn't have any doubts or anything. I went all the way through, claimed graphic design at the beginning, went all the way through with it. Minored in entrepreneurship. I almost did
nice.
photography as a minor, but
Hmm.
I didn't like that the classes were like film based and history of photography. I was like, that's not why I love
Interesting.
photography. Like, I'm not
Yeah,
doing
yeah,
yeah, it was very technical and
right,
very historical, and I was like, blah, no,
yeah.
thank you. um, so, so I've never taken a single real photography class.
Hmm.
We learned how to shoot in manual and stuff in yearbook in high school.
Hmm.
But
Nice.
other than that, it's just been trial and error for almost 10 years. And
Cool.
part of my senior thesis for graphic design to graduate was completely branding and establishing my personal photography business. So,
Wow,
yeah.
that's
Yeah,
pretty
so
cool.
they tied in together, which was really cool. It was a scary step because I knew once I did that, I had to do contracts and invoices and taxes and legal documents and all the stuff that no one wants to do.
Yeah, yeah.
But I did it, and I'm glad I did because it's been the best thing ever. Well, not out here in New Mexico yet, but in San Diego,
Right.
California, it was the best thing
Yeah.
ever.
Oh,
So yeah.
yeah.
No,
That's
it's
so
good
cool.
though. Jack of all trades. I got design and photography, so whichever one's kind of slacking, you just pick it up on the other one. So
Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, I was a graphic designer myself in middle school. I started, and then I went into TV and film in
really
college. I mean, no, in high school,
okay.
and then I went into theology in college. So like, but I worked for the marketing department for the university. I went to Ave Maria University.
Okay.
I don't know if you ever heard.
Yeah,
We're
my
looking at
sister goes
Catholic
there.
University. Oh, really?
Yeah,
That's
she's
so
a
cool.
junior there, I think. Yeah, she plays
Oh,
soccer.
really? What year was she? Did she go there? Like, what was her first year?
She was 2016 or 2017? 2016.
2016, 2017. Yeah, 26. Okay, then we were. I was there, and I graduated in 2017. So we were probably there
Okay.
for one
Oh,
year at
no
the
way.
same time.
So
Yeah,
weird.
that's so
Yeah.
cool. That's so fun. Awesome.
Yep.
Yeah. So I went there and I did theology, and so like, but I worked for the marketing department, so I was still able to keep graphic design. The way I actually got the job was that my friend asked me to make a retreat shirt, and I made the retreat shirt, and like I got both of my jobs because of that retreat shirt. Like people reached out to me, I
No
was like, "Oh
way.
my gosh, like that was so like that's like an amazing shirt." So like I got two job offers, whether it was internal marketing and external marketing. So marketing with inside
Heck
the
yeah.
university and then outside. So I was like, "Wow."
That's awesome.
So it was really cool, and and like I use that now for both of them for the podcast. So it's really fun, and I love it. I
That's
just don't
super cool.
do the coolest things that you get to do where you design logos for companies. Actually, I just designed a logo for a friend, but I don't do that often.
Yeah. Well, and I never, it's weird because I went to college for that. So you would think, like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, she did that after college, but I didn't. And I
Yeah.
never really, it's not that I didn't want to, but there's a difference between the relationship and like me experience in photography versus design.
Yeah.
With photography, it's like
Yeah.
they choose you because they love your work and you meet them and you create magic and you
Right.
send them their photos and
Right.
it's great and it's over. And then with
Right.
design, they choose you because you've got the degree, but they still know what they want to see visually. But you also have to create that visually.
Right.
And then you go back and forth for a while and then you give it to them and it's
Yeah.
great. But yeah, they're just different in their own ways.
Right.
And I'm grateful that I have design now because photography's kind of jumped off a cliff and left me hanging here. But
And you had to cancel two
but
gigs
I
you had
did
going, right?
3 now.
Three.
3.
Oh, I'm so
I had
sorry.
1 in San Diego back in March, and then I had 2 coming up in Northern
Oh
California and
man.
Alabama in May. I know. It's fine. 2020 is just not the year for photography. It's also
Yeah.
my husband and I
Not the year
said,
for
you
much
know, there's
things.
only so much you can do. No, it's not really, honestly, that's true. Um,
Yeah.
we made a joke and we said there's certain places where you just can't sell certain things. And you
Right.
can try as much as you want. You can talk to as many professionals or professors or whatever as you want. But at the end of the day, you're not going to sell surfboards in Alaska. And I was like,
Right.
you're right.
That's true.
Okay.
That's true.
So you
I
got to
mean,
get creative. Yeah.
they must be really cheap up there, if anything.
Yeah, it is. It's just
Yeah.
different life standards, priorities, all
Yeah.
that stuff.
That's fun. Cool. So do you have any like favorite like projects that you've done, like whether it be photography or graphic design? Like do you have any favorite ones that you done? I know
Well, favorite
fluent
was
English
probably
well.
my senior thesis. uh, my favorite design project was probably my senior thesis,
Okay.
branding my own business
Yeah.
and really being pressured by different professors to like really go like hit a home run with this
Mm-hmm.
and put in more work than I wanted to, of course.
Uh-huh.
I was like, oh yeah, I'll just design a pricing guide and a what to wear to your session. And they're like, no, that's not enough. You need to have tangible products. You need to have,
Right.
and I was like, oh, why? And
Yeah.
now I'm so glad and then photography wise, oh gosh. I mean, I remember the first session that I had that was a travel session.
Uh-huh.
They were out in California. I was still in college in Alabama.
Uh-huh.
And they had found me on Instagram. I had hashtagged a couple like hashtag California photographer
Uh-huh.
under my
Photo.
bio a little bit or my photos. Yeah. But I thought nothing of it. And they found me and they said, I saw you're coming to Southern California, which I was coming, but for friends. And so I just kind of
Oh.
barely advertised it and
Mm.
was like, if I get a shoot, cool.
Uh-huh.
They're like, we'd love you to take our engagement photos. We hated our original ones and we love your work. And that was the first
Wow.
time I was like, someone in Southern California reached out to a college girl in Alabama and was disappointed in their photos. There's at least 500, I found this out through my research paper.
Yeah.
There's at least 500 photographers per state if you divide the amount of photographers in the US,
Wow.
which means there's
Wow.
probably 4 times that in California in general. So
Yeah, yeah.
so the fact
True.
that
Wow.
they found me and called me and wanted me to shoot their wedding or their engagement photos out in Southern California was like, whoa, I could actually do this.
Yeah.
Those were the best photos I'd taken to that date. Best
That's
photos
so
I'd edited.
cool.
I edited them within 24 hours. I was like, this is what I want to do.
That is
I
so
never want to
sick.
quit. I never want to do anything else.
That's awesome.
And then when I moved out to San Diego, it was that all the time, like
That's
3
so
times a
cool.
week. I had a couple sessions and weddings, and it was amazing. It was literally like this dream life that you're like, I didn't know I could have this.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's so cool, man. I love that. I always wanted to get into photography and do that kind of
yeah,
stuff, but like it's a whole. I mean, it's a, one is you like you said, it's like pretty saturated. Um,
yes,
but it's
yeah,
like also it's but the whole idea of like you can just make somebody's like day with a nice photo, you know, a nice portrait
mhm,
of themselves, a nice picture of their family. Like
right,
it's just
right,
so cool.
right.
I you know, I don't want to. I can't. I don't have the time for it. I know it's like a very intricate system, and to be really good at it, you got to put years into it.
Yeah, yeah. And the other thing too is I'm just an emotional, like romantic, nostalgic kind of person. And
Yeah.
all of that plays into photography so well. So when I get to like see love happening and I'm like documenting it and the sun's coming through and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is
Start
great.
crying.
And then you give them this, I know. I've cried probably every single wedding I've ever shot.
Wow, that's so
As I'm
sweet.
like focused on the groom as she's coming down the aisle, I'm
Hmm.
probably bawling behind my
Oh
camera.
man, that's.
But every single time I deliver photos and I get that reaction of, holy cow, that's us. Oh my gosh, you
Hmm.
captured us. Like it
Hmm.
wasn't just like, oh wow, we look so good. It was like, that's us, and you
Yeah.
captured it, and I'm just like, that's all, that's it. You don't even have to
That's it.
pay me. That's awesome. Like, you know, if that's how business worked, of
Yeah.
course, but
Yeah.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
so great. Wow, I love it. I love that you have such a passion for it too. So that means you're doing the right things there.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool.
True.
Um, like who do you think your like audience is? Go back on your Instagram. Who do you think your audience is for? That who are the how many ever thousands of people are following you? Who do you think they are outside of just being those, excluding the ones that are your friends, those that if you've met through social media?
Right.
Like who are those people?
Right. So recently I found a link on Google that you can put your um like Instagram handle into, and it'll tell you your demographics
Mm,
overall. It tells you that on Instagram in like a
sure.
smaller form. Um
Mm-hmm.
but they're anywhere between like 16 and 25/30-year-old women
Mm-hmm.
mostly. Um and a lot of them I think are high school, college age girls.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of conversations I end up having the most.
Right.
um, or like newly married, right
Oh,
around
okay.
that. Basically, my demographic for photography is my demographic for
Yeah.
like the high schoolers, the college, the relationships,
Yeah.
and the newly married.
Right.
Yeah, and so that's pretty much who my audience is for the most part.
That's cool. I mean, do you
Yeah,
when you make your post and like do you have that goal in mind, like to inspire or or is it just to just share your life, or do you have this like, oh, this is for that
right,
16-year-old who is
right.
struggling through
I think
this?
Yeah, I think it's a little of both.
Mm-hmm.
I think the big sister comes in,
Mm-hmm.
and like I start thinking like, I know there's younger girls following me, and I was that younger girl. Cecilia Pappas and she and I are really good
Yeah.
friends, and we talk about this all the time. When we were younger, we didn't have that cool Catholic girl to look at. We didn't
Right.
have that like, oh, she makes Catholicism look so fun and
Right.
normal and like awesome.
Yeah.
Like that's so cool. And so knowing that I think that stays in the back of my mind and her mind too, whenever we do share things or when we do things. And I think it helps hold us accountable. Because
Nice.
how are we going to come on and tell you, like, yeah, go to Mass every Sunday? Like the Eucharist and confession are awesome if we're not doing that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how are we going to like encourage you to go to daily Mass
Right.
when you can if we're not doing
Right.
that? And so, yeah, I think a little bit of both. Definitely don't hold back on sharing my life,
Mm-hmm.
whether or not it relates to anyone.
Right.
But but I do think in the back of my mind is always that little Catholic Megan Aaron
Yeah.
who was asking her dad why you have to go to confession once a month.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why the heck why are you making us go to confession every month? I went last month. I'm not
Yeah.
a sinner.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and you just don't grasp
Yeah.
it because you don't have anyone besides your parents telling you about your faith.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point you need to be inspired by someone else. You need to have some other role model outside of your parents.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so I do think that stays in the back of my mind for
Yeah,
sure.
I totally agree. Mine, like for myself, I mean, that's why I went into youth ministry, right? I
Yeah.
was, I didn't grow up as a strong Catholic household as you did. And I
Hmm.
was an only child for like 12 years, and I had my younger sister.
Yeah.
And then I did have older siblings, but none of them were like really, really like Catholic at all. They were raised
Right.
Catholic because it's part of our like culture. But I was the
Right.
first generation born in America, and raised in
Right.
America. So like there was like a whole lot of not like known pressure, but I didn't put a
Hmm.
name to it until I was older. Um, so I didn't really know how to like where to place that in my heart, until I was a lot older and like realized, wow, like I didn't have anybody to look up to. I had nobody to
Right.
like say like, hey, Catholicism is not only part of your culture, but it's true, and it's
Right. It's true.
awesome, you know.
Right. And it's like actually the coolest part of marriage, or you know
Hmm.
what I mean? Like you don't have young there was never like a young Catholic couple that I was like, wow, they both look so normal. Like
Hmm.
she has like, just even if it's like shallow things like, oh well, she has a sense of style and she's not awkward and weird, and he's such a cool looking guy, like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, just like things that are shallow but things that we as humans instantly are attracted to because we're attracted to beauty, we're
Yeah.
attracted to like a
Right.
sort of stereotype or a standard or whatever it is.
Yeah.
um and you just get so used to thinking that Catholics are like, that's just a religion and that's what you have to do, and there's
Right.
no normalcy or humanity or like relatability beyond that.
Yeah.
And so I think that's been the coolest thing about all of this too, for sure.
Yeah. That's awesome. Really cool. I love being, like I was saying with you, I like to be to known as like, hey, like Adrian's like he's only 25 and but they think of 25 being so old, it is annoying. Like my teens. I'm like, I am not even married yet. Like I don't even, and
I'm young as heck.
and so like I was like, I can do TikTok and I have to like convince myself I'm young still.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think at this point they understand. But it took 3 years to get them
Yeah,
to figure
yeah,
that out. So it's nice to see, like that's why I like the other route where you're on. Like it's on Instagram. Like no one's gonna think 20. Like when you're 22, 23, like
yeah.
is old. But like when I came into the parish, to my church, I was 23 years old.
Right,
And they already thought I was old. Like I was like, come
right,
on.
right.
So that's very interesting. Um, what is your goal for the rest of the year? I know it's like it's been kind of a crazy year for your businesses and stuff like that, but it's not too, like do
It's
you
not
have
over.
goals and have yeah, it's not over. We still got like hopefully a little bit more than half of the year left.
Right. Um, I think a lot of my goals shifted. I had a lot of business goals for sure. But I
Yeah.
think once we moved here, once we found out we were pregnant, and then once we realized, like, once obviously COVID happened, and once I
Hmm.
realized that it's just a different demographic here and not everything that worked in Alabama or that worked in California is going to work here. I think
Hmm.
a lot of my goals shifted to personal spiritual goals.
Hmm.
Things like um, bringing our baby into the world and making that like our like main priority.
Yeah.
Um, Growing in relationship with Christ as a married couple, that became a bigger priority. um, really trying to be intentional with each other because both of us are in a tough situation. Both of us
Hmm.
don't have a lot of friends out here. We miss our community. We miss the
Yeah.
life that we had in San Diego. And
Right.
so trying to figure out how to build each other up and like make it through this the most productive, but also like glorifying to God way that we can.
Yeah.
Um, so I think at the end of the day, those are the goals.
Hmm.
Um, and to give ourselves grace too. I'm
Yeah.
really good at beating
That's so
myself up
good.
and saying, "What the heck, Meg? Like, why can't you keep it together? Or why can't you like you're not getting as much work done as you used to in college?" And it's like, well, yeah, because in college you were having 3 cups of Dr. Pepper a day. You weren't pregnant. You weren't emotional. You weren't in a new state. Like, like let's be realistic with yourself here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
giving ourselves grace too, for
That's
sure.
true. That's really important, especially right now. I know, like for ourselves, it's easy to get down, especially because like you might not seem as productive. You might not be able to like
Right.
especially if you're like an athlete who likes to get to the gym, but then you can't now, and you're stuck
Hmm.
at home.
Right.
Like myself, I love the gym was like a way to get away,
An
and now I
outlet.
don't
Yeah.
have that, so it's like it just sucks. And I don't know people out there. You get down on yourself, so don't
Hmm.
so do you have
Stop
a
it.
yeah, stop it down. What is the message? One of the last things I like to ask is, what is your message to people out there, the people who are following, those who you might remind you of yourself, who are you know when you were younger and stuff like that, or just in general.
Oh gosh. Um, don't say offer it up.
Don't say offer it up, please don't.
Don't make that your first line of like help to your poor friend.
Yeah.
um, no, let me think. Oh golly, that's such an
Yeah,
open-ended question. That's a
I
good one. That's a
know.
good journalistic question, but
Yeah. Sometimes I get really
um,
short answers. Sometimes I get really, really like long and really good answers. So I mean,
yeah.
it's whatever you like comes to you. Don't worry if it's not the best thing that you could have thought of.
um, okay. So this is one that I share with a lot of people a lot of the time because a lot of the time, people that follow me, like you were saying, at some level, want to. quote unquote live the life I'm living or have the Instagram I have, whatever that means or looks like to them, because they, no matter what, will never know the full picture.
Yeah, that's true.
Is that you have got to find your confidence and your purpose and everything in God first. And maybe not even first, because I feel like that's something that we're all constantly trying to figure out.
Yeah.
But you have to start there, and you have to be yourself. The amount of Catholic Instagrams that we just see pop up all the time now that share photos of crucifixes and rosaries and stuff is not bad.
Yeah.
But it's not like, you were placed here for a reason. You should live out your Catholic faith for that reason through the ways that you as a person can.
Yeah.
If that's through art, if that's through athletics, if that's through whatever means that is, don't, not that they're diminishing it, but don't lessen it to just your faith in general. There's only so many ways you can relate to someone if all you do is talk about your Catholic faith. Like, how are you going to evangelize? How are you going to open that conversation and open that door? And how are you going to make people feel comfortable talking to you, relating to you, finding a friend in you or whatever, if you're so focused on making that Catholic influencer thing happen that all you're doing is Catholic, 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 because there comes a point where there's love and there's human and there's things like that come first. And that is what will draw people into the Catholic Church. And that's what will give you purpose and fulfillment too. You're not going to get it just by posting a rosary and, I don't know.
Yeah. It's true. I mean, make your reach broad. Like Christ went into what he did. He went to the people and went in their house, the sinners.
Right.
Like,
and
meet them where
think
they're
about
at.
the saints too.
Yeah.
Like, because I had someone asking me about what some other Catholic was saying on their story and how they should feel about it. And I said, I think there's truth to it. I think there's some truth to what every person has to say. But Mother Teresa and St. Augustine they've lived their faiths in totally different ways and impacted people just as much. One was graceful and quiet and a servant. One was aggressive and had all these philosophical, theological things happen, but they are both saints and they were both strong Catholics. And that you can't, the minute you just only focus on your faith and talking about the word Catholic and whatever is the minute you forget that part of you that makes you different and that makes you that specific saint you were set here to be.
So good. That was so good.
Great. You made me think for a second. So
I love it. What is so another last thing I like to do is have you shout out a couple Instagram accounts that you want the listeners to follow, like whether it be your friends.
My husband.
Yes.
He's trying to get to 3,000. No, but for real, if you're a dude at all listening to this podcast, there's a YouTube video that he is working on right now, researching for a lot, that is going to be really vulnerable and very something that I think a lot of people need to hear from a young guy's perspective.
Right.
So go follow him at I freaking don't know how many underscores Wells. He's tagged in my bio, so if you can find me, you can find him. He's also all over my page. And then Cecilia Pappas is one of my absolute favorites. Do you want me to say out her name?
I'll have it in the thing. I think it's just Cecilia Pappas, right?
It is just Cecilia Pappas,
I think I've tagged her a couple times before because everyone's shouted her out. I guess that she'll be my next person too.
Let me not shout her out because gosh, she's got
it's been Koji de Ramos from the Culture Project and Jarrell, I think, even shouted her out.
Okay.
So I guess I need to reach out to her. It's hey, I've shouted you out a couple times. You want to come on the podcast too?
You want to come on the podcast? Yeah. No, she's awesome.
Oh yeah.
Mary Lenneberg. I just got off the phone with her today, and I'm working with her in the design world. But she is awesome, and she's proof that we're in totally different phases of life. She is much older than me. I've got so much wisdom to learn from her, but we can still there's still so much common ground just because of the Catholic faith, and there's still she's awesome. She's like a motherly figure.
That's awesome. Send me her, just send me everybody's, and I'll put them on the show notes.
Perfect. I'll do that. I think that's it.
So,
I mean, there's so many,
yeah.
but if you find one of them, look at who suggested to follow underneath them, and then go follow those people too, because I'm sure.
That's always a good way to do it. That's how I did it at first. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Thanks, Megan. Thanks, Megs.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
It was really cool to have you on and have you share a little bit and get to learn a little more about all your. Like, I love graphic design and photography and all this stuff. So it's really cool to hear all this. I mean, I love hearing people's stories in general, and so just being able to connect with people. Thanks. Yeah. So. It's just part of what I desire and part of youth ministry, and so why not put it into a podcast? So yeah, thanks for coming on. If you want to follow Meg, go follow her at Megs__Wells on Instagram. Are you anywhere else? Like YouTube? What's your YouTube?
We are on YouTube, but everything is linked on my Instagram in my bio.
Okay. So all of that will be in her Instagram link, but I'll also have it on her show notes. I'll get the links to all of that and put it on there for you guys to easily access all of it. Cool. If you want to follow Living Ardently, you can follow it at Living Ardently on Instagram. You can also follow my personal account at It's Only Adrian. That's where you'll see a bit more of my personal life, things that I do with my teens, things I do at home. It's really just not much unless I'm sharing my podcast stuff too. And yeah, that's where if you want to come on and be a guest as well, be part of this collab month at all, reach out, send me a DM or anything like that. Obviously, you can always chat with Meg. You're always open to that, it seems like. So
as long as you're nice.
Yeah, be nice. Be nice, that's all. Yeah. If you have any questions or want to ask her about anything about being a military wife or coming to be a new mom or things like that, go chat with her. If you want to talk to me about that kind of stuff, I don't know if I'll be able to help you at all. So.
Come on, you got it.
So if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, it would be super helpful if you guys take a few moments to review and rate the podcast on the podcast app. But if you're listening anywhere else, just make sure you're subscribed and following so you get notifications as to when we're posting this month. Like I said, during the month of collabs or the COVID collabs, we are posting 3 times each week. So Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Mondays and Wednesdays are normal podcast episodes, and then Fridays are called the 5-Minute Fridays, where we just have fun and enjoy and do some random stuff. So hope you guys enjoy this stuff. I hope this helps you. Make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel as well, which is Living Ardently Podcast. If you go check that out. Also, if you've been enjoying the podcast and you want to donate and support financially, we don't have a Patreon just yet, but we do have a way for you to support the podcast through Anchor by committing to $1 a month, a few dollars a month, $10 a month, whatever you're able to. Everything's appreciated. Like I said, I'm a youth minister, so I don't make that much, but I spend a lot of money onto this podcast. So whatever you donate goes straight back into the production of this podcast. Again, I'm not going to stop the podcast if I don't get donations, but it doesn't hurt to ask. So if you can, that'd be such a blessing. If not, thank you for listening, and please keep listening. Anyway, do you have any last remarks, Meg?
I like where I ended. That was good.
All right. Thanks so much again for you coming on, and thank you for listening. I hope this helps you guys in some way, shape, or form. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And until Wednesday, when we interview my friend from Australia, keep living ardently. Peace.